Hello everyone, Republic Jim here, coming to you live from Barn Body World Headquarters once again. But rather than a workout, today I wanted to do a somewhat brief update to a video that I posted back on June 21st about the Travis Decker manhunt and my thoughts on it. And I'm going to take a victory lap on this one. I'm feeling pretty smug. Of course, that's provisional pending the DNA analysis of the remains. But for anybody that is unaware, September 19th, the news broke that some remains had been found in the search for Travis Decker, and they're almost certain that they do belong to him. And the spoiler alert here is that the location that they found those remains was roughly a quarter mile away from an area that I had mentioned in my video that I thought was a likely area to look. And in that video I'd said that at the time I thought that the sheriff's office and the feds were going about the search all wrong, basically, and that he was either alive and completely out of the area, or he was deceased on the first day, and all the different leads that they were following up on, and and saying that they had him on the run and all that, and those were just mistaken identity, just random other people out in the woods. And if this find turns out to indeed be his remains, which seems highly likely, then I'll be completely vindicated in that view. And because they said it was skeletal remains, very badly decomposed, so clearly not long at all after the crime happened he would have been deceased. So I'll link down below in the description to the original video I did, especially since not many people saw it. And I'll also link a news article that is the one that so far has the most detail that I've seen as far as the location of the find and everything. But yeah, in my original video I gave 3 different scenarios that I thought were possible. The one with him taking a vehicle and leaving the area immediately and probably being in Canada. I said in that video that I didn't think that was very likely, and I thought it was more likely that he was already deceased. And roughly the 12:30 mark of that video, I think it was, I mentioned the specific area that if he committed the crime and then had taken his own life, the area that I thought was most likely to look, and I mentioned about going up a drainage on the mountain to the north. Well, that mountain happens to be called Grindstone Mountain. And big surprise, Grindstone Mountain is where the remains were found. I will say that, I had said probably statistically no more than a half mile, and the news story says that it was basically about 3/4 of a mile away from the campsite. So yeah, I was off by a quarter mile. But I'm going to put a map up on the screen here, and there's the purple tent down at the bottom that represents the campsite where the crime happened, and then the red and white circle is the general area that I mentioned that I thought was the most likely, and I put a 200-meter radius ring around that just to show kind of the broader possible search area there. But somewhere in that general range was what I thought was likely. And then the yellow marker up at the top is my best guesstimate for where the remains were found, just based on what the news article says. going, you know, roughly 3/4 of a mile from the campground and about 4,000 foot elevation. Somewhere right in there seems like the most probable, because other areas, 4,000 foot elevation is either closer or further away. Now, granted, the location could have been further to the west. There's another area there that would fit the general criteria, except that it would be a lot harder to get to from the campground without leaving a trail. In my video, I mentioned the possibility of following the drainage, you know, going in the water to throw off the tracking dogs, and that was a possibility for why they hadn't been able to pick up a trail. And the Boggy Creek goes right up the side of Grindstone Mountain there, and then branches off. You know, there's a little tributary there that would lead right to the general area that I have marked that I think is probably roughly where they found him. Again, I'm not sure on that. I'm just speculating based on the information they provided. But anyway, it's not very far away from the location that I had picked out on the map. And just to kind of give perspective on that, I'm going to put this other zoomed out map up on the screen. And this shows more like the broader search area where the sheriff's office and the feds were following up all these leads, and where they were running around doing a major search down in the enchantments down at the bottom of the picture. And you know, they're miles and miles away from the original crime scene, and so that kind of gives you much more of a perspective of how close the remains were found, and you know, and how close my potential search area was. So anyway, as more details come out in the following days, hopefully they'll get the DNA results back quickly and confirm that that was in fact him, and you know, and then they can give more information about the location and such. But anyway, you know, that was kind of my most likely scenario, was that he had in fact committed the crime and then gone and ended his own life. And that was just based on lost person behavior and some logic on my part. That was the most likely route that I saw him taking, and came out pretty close to nailing it on the final location there, especially when you look at the broader scale there and see all those miles and miles of wilderness and everything, and how close my little point was to where he ended up. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this, and I think honestly, if you know, I mean, I can't say, it's pretty rugged terrain there and it's tough to find anything, but I think honestly, if they had looked along that drainage and continued on up there past, you know, and gone like further up the side of the mountain right off the bat, I mean, there's a pretty good chance they would have found him early on. But that's just, again, speculation on my part. But anyway, as I said, I'm feeling smug on this one. I'm chalking this up as a victory, and I'm just going to enjoy being right about something. So hopefully you found that interesting or informative. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.